speaking of Salt Lake City, we're going to get into the results of the tournament. And we're going to just start off by talking about Azul's run a little bit, your deck choice, Azul, why you chose to run it back with the Regis after Peoria just a couple weekends ago, and how you adjusted your list. Because there was definitely a few things that were quite different and some cards that I think people were not at all expecting.
Yeah, so went with the Reggies once again. It kind of felt similar like my run from Milwaukee to NAIC, where it's like the deck didn't do well enough at Peoria for people to be that concerned with it. I'm sure it was on more people's radar, and I'm sure some of the better players took a look at it and were like, okay, this deck is maybe better than we thought it was, and we could definitely see some of the other top players potentially bringing this again. We saw like Big Charms and Palkia and stuff like that. I saw some Lost Cities in some Kyurem decks, so people were a little bit more prepared, but not to the point where it really swings any of the matchups super hard. And we didn't expect anyone to go super hard to try and beat it. And we didn't think the meta was going to really shift too much. Like a lot of the top decks are going to stay the top decks. The meta was going to be really wide open still. So it's hard to want to concern yourself with one of the smaller percentage decks anyway. So we're like, all right, Reggie's still probably the best play going into Peoria overall. The only thing that we're a little bit concerned about that we thought would be a little bit more hype was Gudra. And then the one of the tech cards that we did play was we did bring the Yellhorn specifically to tech against Eskew. It can help against Gudra, but it's definitely not as good against Gudra as it is against Eskew, and really isn't like a win condition against Gudra. If it was only good against Gudra, we wouldn't have played it. But it basically gives you an auto win against Eskew, or
It's
they can't
Ice
just
Cube,
beat
by the
you.
way.
Ice Cube.
Ice Cube. You know, he's like got
They
an
can't.
ice cube on his head. Ice
He
cube.
does.
Ice cube, right?
And they can't just beat you with Ice Cube. So they have to like kind of play the game more traditionally or whatever you want to call it. And I actually did beat 3 Ice Cubes throughout the tournament. And it also helped me get a tie against a Flying Pikachu deck. So it pulled its weight for me heavily. And I think some of the other guys got some ties against Gudras with it, or even beat a Gudra or two. So even though it doesn't really give you the win against Gudra, it's still a pretty bad matchup. You can cheese them if you draw aggressively enough or they draw slow enough. So yeah, I mean, it was actually kind of funny throughout my run. I actually played against 0 Mew and 0 Giratina throughout the whole tournament. I don't even remember really. I played against like 3 or 4 mirror matches, though. I played against like a lot of mirror matches. So,
I mean, there was a
um,
ton of Reggie in day two. Like, it wasn't one of the
yeah,
most played decks in day one, but I mean, the deck is just solid and it had a good conversion rate into day two. So I think that's probably where most of your Reggie mirrors came in, right? Was probably in day two, or
actually, no,
at
I
least
hit
maybe
2 of
in the
them.
later rounds of day one, I guess. But
Yeah, I hit 2 of them in day 1. I played against Drew in round 7. I started out 5-0, and then I had my first double, not double brick, but I mean, one of the games I played a supporter every turn and still didn't attack once. So I drew pretty bad against Cyrus playing the Arceus Tina, which is a very good matchup, and I beat one of those in day 2. But yeah, double bricked. Or not double brick, but double just didn't do anything against Cyrus in 2 of the games. So that was my first loss. I went to 5-1. Then I played against Drew the next round, who also made top 8 with Reggie's. And we decided to ID because if we play it out, then the loser only gets 1 winning in. But if we ID, we both get 2 winning ins from there. And I would rather have 2 winning ins than, take the 50-50 and then have to only get 1 winning in after that. So I'd rather have the double winning in not up against the mirror match. A lot of people told me I was probably incorrect with my choice.
I
If I
was
could
one
go
of
back,
those people.
yeah, if I could go back, maybe I would change it. But I don't know. I felt pretty confident that I didn't want to play it out against Drew in the Reggie Mirror and then take my 2 winning ins after that. And then after that, I did beat another. I played against another Reggie and I did win that mirror match. So, and then after that, I got my tie against the Flying Pikachu. I was actually going to win game 3, but we just did not even have close to enough time for me to finish it out. But yeah, just getting the win again. I mean, getting the tie against Flying Pikachu, I'll kind of take that because that is a pretty rough matchup as well. So yeah, going into day 2, I was at 6-1-2, and then I had a pretty steep climb from there, and I got pretty lucky to actually even make top 8, to be honest, because I needed. I tied my last round against Grant in the mirror match, so I was at 34 points. But there was expected 10 people with 34 or more points, and my resistance was terrible. So I knew I had to get lucky. And then John Ang tied his game, and then the other person tied with 34 points got ninth, and I won out on opponent's win percentage to get top 8. Where, like I said, I got to play against Grant in top 8, which is a free matchup for me because I always beat Grant. I'm like 6-0 against Grant lifetime. So it was actually in that match specifically, it was funny because game 1, I prized double rock and he got the first attack off. But then I find my heavy ball. I get lucky and find my heavy ball, get my rock out, attack. He whiffs an attack, and then I get ahead and go from there. And then in game two, he had a really slow start. Gigas passed with like nothing else on the first turn and didn't attack till turn three. So I got the turn two attack off and just was able to keep ahead from there. So yeah, it's always I'm just destined to beat Grant. So I wasn't too nervous about it, to be honest. And then of course hit the Gudra in top four. And even going into it, I was kind of already like content, knowing I was going to get top four. And I think Hale had already played against Kid and Caleb at that point, so I knew he'd be pretty well versed against our list and in the matchup. So and I knew his matchups against them were a little bit shakier. I think he tied Caleb. So I knew at this point he was definitely going to be, that little bit of extra practice against the Reggie, against some top players in the Reggie matchup, like he's going to be that much better off. And yeah, it wasn't very close at all when I went up against him.
Yeah, the game, I mean, you got the down to 2 prizes left in game, or to a point where Hale had 2 prizes left, and you were going for the Regice play, I think, right? Or not the Regice play, but you were gonna go for the Yellhorn play that turn because you
Yeah,
had
yeah.
KO'd one Gudra, and drew an extra card on your stream game, right? In game number 1, got a double prize penalty and just
Yeah.
lost right away. But I mean, that's just kind of part of it. We'll talk about the penalties in these type of situations a little bit later on in this podcast. But regardless of all of that, incredible run, top 4. Congratulations, Azul, going 10-1-4 going into Top Cut. So you did tie 4 games,
Yeah.
but only lost 1 match, which is pretty impressive at a 15-round tournament. So.
Yeah, only the one loss, like I said, to Cyrus, couple rough
And it
draws.
was a
And that's
double
what
brick, right?
yeah, well, not quite double brick. I was playing supporters, but I wasn't attacking. So it's like it's
I mean, if
effectively
you're
a brick
missing
as Reggie.
attacks, like it kind of
Yeah.
like that has to count as a brick a little. Like I mean, you're playing supporters, but just
Yeah.
not hitting energies. Maybe not a
Yeah.
brick, but just like whiffing way too hard.
Yeah, and that's literally all you're trying to avoid is Reggie is just like drawing poorly in 2 games in a set. I would literally trade not drawing poorly 2 games in a set to literally dead draw one game every single match. I'd be fine with that. If
So
I could
would you
just play.
scoop games pretty quickly whenever you like looked at these hands with like stadium double ordinary rod 2 Reggies, like stuff that's just not really working for you? Would you scoop kind of early, or were you kind of playing into a few turns at least?
I would definitely play it a couple turns, especially if I felt like there was enough time left in the round. Like in the round left still. Like if I won game 1 really fast, then I would play out game 2 even if I was drawing pretty poorly for a little while, because a lot of the matchups you're just a research away from an attack, and then you're still favored in the prize trade with Reggie. Like once the prize trade is out of reach, I would just concede immediately. But like if it's just like if I was up against a Kiram, even when they get down to 3 prize cards left, you can just go attack, 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 and the game still ends in your favor. So. And you never know when because you're literally just a research away from just being able to attack sometimes. So especially because like you're not usually doing nothing. You're like drawing a couple cards with Drago, or you're using Regigate, and you're still getting another Reggie into play. So you're still like kind of progressing your board state towards getting close to be able to attack. But you sometimes you're just not attacking that turns. But you're just like a research or a Marnie away. So I would stick it out up until the prize trade is out of reach, and then I would pack it up. I'm not gonna wait for my opponent to like completely throw the match if all they have to do is attack 3 times in a row and basically have 3 attackers set up.
And I'll just ask you about a couple cards in the list real quick before we move on. I guess maybe one card in the list and one card that is not in the list that might surprise some people. You guys played no copies of Boss's Orders, and you did play the Astral Radiance Reggie Alecki, which is a card that you guys had not played the previous weekend. People have played it here and there. I know Drew has pretty much always played this card. But this has always kind of been called the bad Alecki, right? Because the Evolving Skies Alecki is the main one you want to attack with. But why did you decide Astral Radiance Alecki was worth playing? Why did we go with no Boss's Orders? And also, one thing that does feel a little random that people might question would be the one copy of Pokegear 3.0. If you want to just talk about those 3 things real quick.
Yeah, so no boss. We actually almost didn't play any boss for Peoria. It saved me 1 match in Peoria, but overall, we came to the conclusion that we don't really need it. And if the majority of our opponents just don't or think we play it, but we don't play it, that'll be a good enough advantage in making them play around it to be in a good enough spot already. And in most situations, in most matchups, Bad Lucky does what Boss would do anyways. It cleans up a knockout off the bench to get your final prize cards. Like Boss would bring something up, knock it out for your final prize cards. Now you just go, okay, Bad Lucky, snipe KO the thing anyways, and it does effectively the same thing in almost every single matchup in every scenario. A one-up boss would still be nice, and it does give you a better flying Pikachu matchup. So it would be nice for that. That would have been something that would have been nice. Maybe Caleb could have won his top 8 match if we had the boss, but didn't end up going with it. And then the Bad Lucky, I think I mentioned, or that's that's no boss, and the bad Lecky kind of replaces that. And the only reason we really played the bad Lecky is because we didn't play the boss, but is more so because we played the Yell Horn because we were trying to beat Ice Cube. And when you play the Yell Horn, it confuses the Ice Cube, but if they just retreat it and then get it back into the active and can attack with it again, it doesn't do anything. So you have to be able to repeatedly use the Yell Horn to actually to have the game winning effect of it. And I was able to do that 3 times throughout the tournament. I played
Yeah,
against
the first attack, electromagnetic sonar,
yeah.
put a trainer card from your discard pile into your hand. Maybe people might not really be tracking with what the that is, because most people think about just the discard 2 lightnings to snipe 120, but that is
Yeah.
definitely a solid option, and that's kind of what you used it for, right?
Yeah, use the sonar and you just like get the yell horn back. Or I use it in a lot of other situations as well. I recovered ordinary rods, and it's actually one of your best Pokemon to start with when you go second because it can kind of cover any situation depending on how your turn plays out. So if you like play a research and then don't have another supporter, you can just attach an energy to it and recover your research. Or if you do have a supporter, you can just recover a quick ball to get more Reggies next turn, or just get a trekking shoes out of your discard pile, or an ordinary rod if you lost too many on your initial research or anything like that, and just get stuff back to then have more fuel for your next turn or just later in the game. So it's a really good card. I use it a lot in general besides recovering Yellhorn. And like I said, I played against 3 SQs, beat all of them because I had the Yellhorn. So it definitely pulled its weight overall for me throughout the tournament. Played against Cal and Vaughn with the Palkia. They had the SQ in there, and then I played against
Ice
a
cube.
Lost Gate Ice Q. And then I played against a Lost Gate that also had the Ice Q in there. So came in pretty clutch for me. Otherwise, I would have probably lost all of those matchups
Yeah, pretty
because
hard card to beat otherwise. I mean, if you
yeah,
have
no
boss and they
way.
don't have Manaphy, like you can boss into the bench and then a Lecky snipe it, I guess. But like that
Yeah.
involves them not having Manaphy, which they usually will. So this really does feel like it was the best card to tech for that situation. So good looks, good call there.